I sensed my wife was preparing a divorce, so I shifted my assets 2 weeks later. Can you even fathom the gut-wrenching moment you realize the person you vowed forever with was meticulously plotting to take everything from you? They thought they had me cornered, but what they didn't know was I'd been quietly setting a trap of my own. My story isn't just about betrayal. It's about a cold, calculated comeback that left them absolutely reeling. Honestly, I've been skimming through stories like this for a while, never thinking I'd have one of my own. But life has a way of ambushing you, and I've been carrying this weight for months. I just need to get it out. Look, I'm not the kind of guy who jumps to conclusions or assumes the worst. My wife, let's call her M, and we'd been together for 6 years, married for 4. Things were solid, or so I believed. We had our ups and downs, sure, but nothing that screamed, warning, problem ahead. In fact, for most of our relationship, we were that couple. You know the one. Completely devoted. We'd laugh at stupid inside jokes, debate for hours about which movie to watch, and we just had this rhythm that worked. She'd plan these elaborate date nights, and I'd treat her to her favorite takeout after a long day. It felt easy, like we'd actually figured out the whole love thing. That's why what happened next hit me like a ton of bricks. Around 6 months ago, things started to change. At first, it was these tiny details, the kind you'd totally miss if you weren't paying attention. She started carrying her phone everywhere. I mean, even if she was just walking to the kitchen for a glass of water or folding laundry. Before, that phone would just sit on the coffee table for hours, and she wouldn't care who picked it up. One day, I even joked, "What, you running some secret spy ring now?" She chuckled, brushed it off with, "Oh, work's just emailing me a lot." Okay, fine. But a few days later, she put a password on it. That caught me off guard because she'd never bothered before. When I casually asked why, she gave some vague answer about security and hackers. I didn't push, didn't want to seem paranoid, but it just felt off. And it didn't stop there. She started taking calls outside the room. She'd never done that. Her phone would ring, and she'd say, "Oh, let me just grab this real quick," before vanishing into the bedroom or stepping out onto the porch. If I asked who it was always just a friend from work. Then I noticed this new habit, keeping her phone face down on the table. I didn't even know that was a thing until I reached over to hand her something, and she hastily slid it out of the way. It was one of those blink and you miss it moments, but it stuck with me. It wasn't just the phone, though. She started to feel distant. Conversations that used to flow so easily now felt like pulling teeth. If I brought up future plans, where should we go for our anniversary? Or, do you think we should start saving for a new car? She'd just nod and say, "Yeah, we'll see," before quickly changing the subject. It all clicked for me one random Wednesday. She told me she was meeting a friend for coffee after work. Didn't sound weird. She did that sometimes. I happened to be running errands in the same area, so I thought, hey, why not surprise her? That'll be cute. But when I got there, she wasn't with her friend. She was standing outside the cafe, pacing back and forth, her phone glued to her ear. I stayed in my car because something about the way she was talking seemed serious. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but I overheard phrases like, "It's almost ready," and "starting fresh soon." My stomach sank. I couldn't make sense of it, but it certainly didn't sound like job stuff or friend drama. It sounded bigger, like something she had planned. When she finally came home, I asked her about her coffee date, trying to keep my voice casual. She spun this whole narrative about her friend complaining about her boyfriend. It was so unexpected, I just stared at her for a second. Then, a few days later, she hit me with it. We were in the kitchen, I was making a sandwich, and she was scrolling on her phone when she said, "Have you thought more about organizing the bank stuff? Like, do you know where all the account details are?" I slowly lowered the knife and turned to face her. "Okay, what's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light but firm. "You've been bringing up our finances a lot lately. Is there something we need to talk about?" She finally looked up, clearly surprised I'd pressed her on it. No, nothing's wrong, she said, almost too quickly, which made me internally scoff. I just think it's important, that's all. You know, for emergencies. Emergencies like what? I pushed. She shrugged, her expression unreadable. I don't know, just life stuff. It's not a big deal, I promise. I just think it's something we should get on top of. Her answer felt so vague, so ambiguous. I nodded and let it go. But the way she avoided giving a direct answer only fueled my suspicion. It didn't feel like a casual suggestion anymore. It felt like she was hiding something, but I had no idea what. So, the next day while she was at work, I decided to look into our finances. I logged into our joint account online, and that's when I noticed something odd. Over the last month, a few tiny movements had occurred. Nothing huge, but small amounts that didn't have a clear purpose. They weren't for bills, groceries, or anything I recognized. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but it looked like she'd been withdrawing money for some reason I couldn't fathom. I thought about confronting her, but something told me to wait. If I was wrong, I'd look ridiculous. If I was right, I had to be careful. It was eating at me, so I called someone I trusted, an old college friend who also happens to be a lawyer. I told him everything, trying not to sound like a complete conspiracy theorist. Look, he said after I'd explained, I'm not saying something is absolutely going on, but you're not insane for wanting to be prepared. If you're concerned about protecting your assets, now's the time to do it. Better safe than sorry. He walked me through some simple steps to ensure my finances were protected if something happened. I'll admit, taking such drastic action felt completely out of character. It felt like I was preparing for something dreadful, even though I couldn't put my finger on what was wrong. But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. If she was really up to something, and I was starting to suspect I needed to defend myself. It wasn't an easy decision. This wasn't just about money or assets. It was about the life we had built together. I kept replaying images in my head. Our wedding day, the late night talks about our dreams, the silly little jokes we shared. How did we get here? Is this what our marriage had come to? The prospect of taking these measures felt like conceding defeat, like I was officially abandoning the trust we once shared. That evening, while she was out, I sat at my desk and pulled out my laptop. My hand actually shook as I opened the computer and started browsing through everything. Bank accounts, investment accounts, the property deed. Each paper I studied felt like a betrayal, but a persistent voice in my head reminded me that this was about survival, not sabotage. I didn't want to hurt her, but I couldn't shake the idea that if I didn't act now, I'd regret it later. I compiled a list of everything I could transfer and how to do it without raising suspicion. As I typed, a crushing weight settled against my chest. I had trusted her completely for years, and now here I was playing defense against the person I thought would always have my back. Then I called my mother. I explained why I needed her help, but not in detail. Mom, I said, I need you to hold on to some things for me for a while. It's nothing bad, just something I need to do to protect myself, just in case. She was silent for a minute, probably trying to figure out what I wasn't saying. Are you okay? Her voice was laced with anxiety. Yeah, I lied. It's just a precaution. Nothing to worry about. She didn't press me, but I could hear the hesitation in her voice when she responded, Of course, sweetheart. Whatever you need. I hung up with an odd mix of relief and shame. I hated involving her in this mess, but knowing she had my back provided some steady ground in an otherwise chaotic situation. By the time Em arrived home, I had already begun the process. I moved the majority of my assets, our cash, investments, even the house, into my mother's name. I kept just enough in our joint account to keep up appearances, but the rest was locked down. She didn't notice a thing. She walked in, kissed my cheek, and asked if I wanted to watch a movie. I acted okay, but inside I was a wreck. Part of me felt awful, like I had betrayed her trust. But another part of me felt this intense relief, like I was finally gaining control of a situation that had completely spiraled. Over the next 3 days, I tried to maintain a normal routine. I didn't want to tip her off that anything had changed. She seemed satisfied, even unusually cheerful at times. However, rather than putting me at ease, it just intensified my suspicion. If she was plotting something, she was doing an excellent job of concealing it. What really stood out, though, was that she never brought up the finances again. Not even after I'd questioned her that last time. It was as if the subject had completely evaporated from her memory. At first, I thought I'd overreacted, that she'd dismissed the subject since it wasn't relevant. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized she was avoiding it, almost as if she was afraid to bring it up again after I pressed her. I noticed her staring at me a few times, as if she was assessing my mood or contemplating saying something. Every time I noticed, she'd quickly return her attention to whatever she was doing, her phone, the TV, a book. It was subtle, but it was there. It felt like she was waiting for me to bring it up, as if she didn't want to push the issue again. The silence only made me feel more anxious. It wasn't like her to drop anything she considered essential, and the way she avoided it now seemed deliberate. If she was testing the waters, she wasn't diving in. If she was waiting for something, I wasn't about to give her the green light. Whatever her next move was, I knew I had to be one step ahead. Something was coming, but I didn't know when or how. All I could do was prepare. That night, I made sure everything was absolutely solid. I went over the paperwork again, double-checking every aspect of the asset transfers to my mother's name. The house, the savings, the investments, everything was now legally in her name, sealed in an uncontested trust. I even called her to confirm she had all the necessary papers. 2 weeks passed. Everything seemed too normal, frankly. She was acting more loving, even starting to talk about unrelated topics like jobs or what we should eat for dinner. It threw me off because she'd been so aloof for months, avoiding anything more than superficial conversations. Part of me started to wonder if I had been overreacting all along. Maybe her strange conduct was just stress, or something I didn't understand. But then one random Friday night, she sat me down on the couch, turned off the television, and said, "We need to talk." My stomach dropped. I knew what she was going to say before she did. "I think we should get a divorce," she replied, her voice so calm it sounded rehearsed. It wasn't furious or emotional. It was just frigid, as if she'd told me we'd run out of milk. I stared at her, unsure how to respond. As she explained her argument, she talked about needing space, wanting to figure herself out, and feeling like she'd lost her identity in the marriage. Standard breakup phrases that didn't really explain anything. But then she said something that struck a different chord. "You know, I've made a lot of sacrifices for you over the years, and I don't think you really appreciate them. I deserve more." That last part stung. It wasn't just that she wanted out. It was that she framed it as if I owed her something, that everything was my fault and she was simply claiming what was rightfully hers. As I sat there, trying to process what she was saying, a new question popped into my head. Why now? "A friend of mine has been helping me see things more clearly," she continued, not quite looking at me. A friend. I remained still, letting her speak, but my mind was racing. Who was this friend? Why were they so involved in my marriage? The way she said it wasn't casual. It sounded like someone had been hyping her up, convincing her that leaving me wasn't just a choice, but a strategy she needed to implement. And the more she talked about how she deserved more because of her sacrifices, the more skeptical I became. Sacrifices? What kind? She was happy with me, or so she said. I worked hard to offer her the life she desired, and it wasn't just about money. When she asked to move closer to her job, I agreed, even though it meant a longer commute for me. When she wanted to attend that pricey yoga retreat last year, I made sure we budgeted for it, even foregoing a vacation I was looking forward to so she could go. I backed her when she changed careers twice, telling her it was fine to take the risk because I wanted her happy. I truly believed being a decent husband meant putting her first whenever possible. And it wasn't as if I was an unresponsive, distant partner. I showed up. I remembered birthdays and random things she'd mentioned loving. When she mentioned feeling caught in a rut, I suggested date nights. I listened to her complain about her job, friends, and family. I didn't always get it right, but I did try. That's why her "I deserve more" line hurt so much. I didn't even consider buying it. She wasn't upset due to anything I did or didn't do. She was upset because something had changed in her. Perhaps it was the acquaintance she kept bringing up, or something else entirely. But the woman sitting in front of me was not the woman I married, and I was not going to let her rewrite our marriage story to fit her new narrative. I didn't press her in that moment. Instead, I nodded and said something innocuous, like, "If that's how you feel, I guess we should figure out the next steps." She seemed startled that I wasn't arguing or begging her to stay. But I didn't care. My focus had already shifted. I needed to know who or what was behind her sudden, planned shift in conduct. She didn't just wake up one day and decide she wanted out. This was something bigger, and I wasn't going to let it surprise me any more than it already had. After that chat, she moved into her own apartment, and on Monday, the divorce papers arrived. Let me tell you, they didn't just want to end the relationship. They were planning to take everything. Half the house, my savings, my assets, the car. She wanted it all, plus some ambiguous spousal support clauses that made little sense given her high salary. It seemed as if she was expecting me to just hand over everything I had worked for. At first, I thought she was just being vengeful, but the way her demands were articulated, so specific, so aggressive, reassured me that she had someone guiding her through this. So I started digging. I couldn't just ask her who she'd been talking to, so I had to be clever. I started with her social media. She hadn't blocked me, and even though she didn't post frequently, I searched through her tagged photos and comments, looking for someone new. That's when I discovered the pattern. Jake. He repeatedly liked and commented on her posts. Nothing obscene, but enough to make me pause. I clicked on his profile, which was public. At first glance, he didn't appear to be much more than a generic 30-something marketing professional. But as I scrolled down, I spotted something unusual. He posted a photo at the exact same cafe I'd seen her at weeks before, on the same day I overheard her discussing starting fresh. My gut churned. I continued scrolling. More subtle signals. A comment on one of her pictures that read, "You've got this," as well as a selfie he'd taken from what appeared to be her new apartment. None of it was substantial evidence, but it was enough to solidify my suspicion. I wasn't sure what to do with this information, but I knew I couldn't just sit there and wait for answers to come my way. Her statement about a friend who helped her get through things stuck with me, and I wanted to know who it was. I decided to contact one of our mutual acquaintances, Lisa. She and my wife had been friends for years, so I figured she'd know what was going on. I kept the conversation light at first, asking if she'd spoken with my wife lately or if anything seemed strange. Lisa reacted swiftly, saying she had no idea about any friend or any suggestions. I asked a few more probing questions, but she cut the conversation off defensively, claiming she couldn't help me. The entire situation felt rushed, like she was trying to avoid becoming involved. Not willing to give up, I called another mutual friend, Emily. I followed the same pattern, stating that I was simply trying to make sense of things. She was apprehensive at first, responding vaguely to my questions. When I pressed her more, she quickly ended the call, leaving me even more skeptical than before. I sat there, frustrated, trying to figure out my next move. Then, to my astonishment, Emily called back. She told me she needed to make sure what she said wouldn't come back to her. I assured her it wouldn't, and after a long pause, she revealed what she knew. Apparently, my wife had been spending a lot of time with someone named Jake, whom she had met at work. Emily claimed she didn't know much else, but from what she'd heard, Jake was very active in the divorce advice my wife was receiving. Hearing that name felt like a puzzle piece fitting into place. It was evident that this was more than just her need for space or to find herself. Someone else was in the picture, directing her decisions, and I was eager to discover why. I chose to confront it in my own manner. That Saturday, I drove to her apartment building and parked a block away, trying to confirm what I already suspected. A few hours later, she and Jake stepped out of the building. They weren't holding hands or anything, but the way they walked together, close leaning in to talk, was enough. They got into his car and drove away, leaving me sitting there, staring at the spot where they had been. I didn't follow them. I didn't need to. At that point, it was evident. She hadn't simply stopped loving me. She'd been preparing to leave with someone else. And now, everything made sense. The unexpected distancing, the money questions, the forceful demands, the divorce papers. She wasn't simply abandoning me. She was leaving me with nothing, and she was accompanied by someone at all times. I went home that night, my head racing with everything I'd learned. The betrayal burned, but what hurt the most was how premeditated everything was. She was using the divorce as a stepping stone to whatever life she was creating with Jake. But she had no idea what I had planned for her. The first mediation session felt incredibly strained. From the moment we stepped in, her lawyer arrived with a binder so thick it looked like they were bringing a case against a Fortune 500 company. He began listing her demands as if they were entirely reasonable. Half the house, the money, my assets, the car, and even some gibberish about spousal support. I remained silent, appearing to listen, but I was waiting for my attorney to make his move. When it was finally our turn, he handed a stack of paperwork across the table. "Before we proceed," he said calmly, "I think it's important for everyone to review these." Her lawyer took the papers and skimmed through them. His confident posture changed fast as he flipped through the pages, his brow furrowing harder with each one. "What is this?" he inquired, gazing at my lawyer. "These documents show the transfer of all major assets into a trust under my client's mother's name," my lawyer said, his voice level. "The transfers were completed several weeks before the divorce filing, and the trust is fully legal and irrevocable." The room fell utterly silent. Her lawyer looked at her, confused and frustrated. "You didn't mention this," he stated flatly. She snatched the papers from his hands and flipped through them, her face flushing. "This can't be real," she said, staring at the notarized signatures and dates. Then she turned to me, her countenance changing from incredulity to pure rage. "You planned this," she muttered, gazing at me as if I'd committed a heinous crime. "You knew I was going to file, and you set this up to screw me over." I didn't respond. I just sat there and let her connect the dots on her own. Her lawyer, visibly agitated, requested my counsel to elaborate. So he did, slowly, deliberately, and with every piece of evidence necessary to make the transfers irrefutable. The dates aligned exactly, indicating that I had transferred everything well before she filed. The signatures were duly notarized, and the document was solid. There was nothing they could do to challenge it. She was furious. "You're unbelievable," she practically hissed, leaning forward in her chair. "I can't believe you'd do something like this to me." I still didn't say anything. What was there to say? This wasn't about me doing anything to her. This was about me defending myself because she had made it apparent she was not going quietly. The conference finished with her lawyer saying something about needing to rethink their strategy, but everyone in the room knew they had no further moves to make. When we walked out of the building, she grabbed me in the hallway, her expression a mix of rage and desperation. "This isn't over," she added, her tone low. "You're going to regret this." I just looked at her and said, "I already regret trusting you. That's the only regret I have." Things escalated faster than I had anticipated. Following the mediation session, she went into a complete meltdown. Almost instantly, it began with the calls, endless calls. At first, she appeared calm, even remorseful, leaving voicemails that began, "I think we just need to talk," or, "I know this got messy, but we can fix it." When I didn't answer, the tone changed. By the second day, her messages alternated between sobbing and screaming. One voicemail would be her lamenting about making a mistake and not wanting to lose what we had created together. Then she'd launch into a furious tirade, accusing me of being stingy and cruel, blaming me for everything that was wrong in her life. I ignored it all. My lawyer told me not to engage, and honestly, I didn't want to. I was finished playing her games. But she wasn't. When the calls and texts didn't work, she began telling stories. Mutual friends informed me that she had been telling people that the divorce was a hoax, that it was all part of a larger farce, a prank. I mean, who would believe that? The flaws in her story quickly became apparent. Friends began to ask questions like, if it was a prank, why did you file actual legal paperwork? Or, why hire a lawyer and make such specific demands if it wasn't serious? When others didn't instantly accept the hoax justification, she doubled down. She said it wasn't a joke, but rather a test of our relationship's strength. She began casting herself as the victim, claiming that my reaction had hurt and betrayed her, that I had gone too far and broken our marriage's trust. At first, some individuals seemed to believe her stories. I'd get strange emails or comments from acquaintances like, "Wow, I didn't realize things were so rough for her." Even her brother lashed out, saying, "You should have just talked it out instead of being so drastic." It was annoying, but I knew the truth would eventually come out. And it did, thanks to a common friend. Let's call him Matt. Matt and I weren't particularly close, but we'd always been nice to each other. A few weeks after the mediation, he messaged me unexpectedly, stating he had something I needed to see. When we met, he pulled out his phone and showed me a series of text messages between her and Jake. I was confused at first. "How did you even get these?" I inquired, scanning through the messages. Matt revealed that he and Jake shared a mutual friend who had overheard their talks. Apparently, this common acquaintance had grown concerned about the way things were going, especially when Jake began gloating about how he was assisting her in securing her future. It didn't take long for that common friend to figure out what securing her future really meant, trying to bleed me dry. Feeling awful about remaining silent, the friend grabbed screenshots of the texts and sent them to Matt, believing he had a better relationship with me and could warn me. "This guy's been playing both sides," Matt replied, shaking his head. "He's been hyping her up to take you for everything, while making her believe he'd be there for her afterward." Matt handed me the phone. "I thought you should know. You don't deserve this, man." The texts were terrible. She wasn't just ranting to Jake about the divorce. She was actively planning her future steps with him, and he was guiding her through them. A message she left read, "Once the settlement's done, we'll have everything we need. I just need him to agree to the terms." Jake responded, "Don't back down. Make him feel guilty if you have to. He owes you. We'll start fresh once you've got the money." I sat there, staring at Matt's phone, trying to comprehend what I was reading. This was neither a misunderstanding nor an emotional response to a failed marriage. This was cold, deliberate manipulation. I thanked Matt, and he left, but my thoughts were racing. Everything made sense now. Her abrupt isolation, her fixation with our finances, and her harsh demands throughout the divorce. It was all part of a plan, one she had been developing with Jake behind the scenes. The texts soon circulated among our mutual friends. Matt shared them with a few, and they quickly spread. Her story suddenly ceased to be credible. People who had previously been indifferent or even supportive of her began to distance themselves, and the change was almost immediate. People who had previously defended her or remained neutral suddenly recognized her for who she truly was. Even her closest allies started to back away. By the time the divorce was finalized, she had only her personal things. Her lawyer quietly dismissed her complaint after recognizing there was no legal basis to stand on. All of those bold requests had crumbled under the weight of the documents I had produced, and the trust one had established with my mother was unbreakable. Jake seemed to vanish as soon as things began to unravel. I wouldn't be surprised if he used her as much as she did me. From what I could tell, he'd been feeding her fantasies of independence and a new beginning. But the moment it became evident she wasn't going to walk away with anything, he was gone. Without Jake in her corner, her confidence plummeted. The calls and texts continued, but they became increasingly desperate. She wasn't accusing me anymore. She begged. "Can we just talk? Please? I'll do anything to fix this," one voicemail stated. A different one, "You don't have to forgive me, but can't we just settle this and move on? I'll drop everything if you just talk to me." I didn't respond. I couldn't. It was too late to reverse the harm. Even her family began to drift away. Her brother contacted me at one point, apologizing for some of the things he had said before when he believed her side of the story. "I didn't know what she was doing to you," he said. "I'm sorry I ever took her word for it." As for me, I received the house, my savings, and something I hadn't experienced in a long time, peace of mind. My mother, as usual, was my rock. She arrived with buckets of paint and a list of suggestions to help me reclaim the space as mine now. Life feels like it's mine again. No more second-guessing every small interaction. No longer feeling betrayed. Just peace. She is a chapter from my history that I no longer read, and the remainder of the story is entirely up to me to write. What would you have done in my place? Have you ever faced such a cold, calculated betrayal? Tell me what you think. I really want to know in the comments below.